It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, August 20th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. President Moon Jae-in hails a local conglomerate's plan to invest $825 million in the carbon fiber sector. While making a visit to the group's carbon fiber production line, he stresses the need for Korea to reduce dependency of high-tech materials on a specific nation.
Japan allows the export of a key material used by Samsung for making semiconductors. Could this be a sign of change? Seoul says it's too early to tell.
South Korea's foreign minister is in Beijing for talks with her Chinese and Japanese counterparts. Kang is likely to ask Tokyo once again to drop its trade curbs against Seoul.
And Washington's top nuclear envoy, Stephen Biegun, touches down in Seoul for talks with South Korean officials. North Korea will top the agenda, but he's also likely to discuss Seoul's military intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo, the fate of which currently hangs in the balance. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Noah Dam.
And I'm Han Dan. Thanks for joining us. President Moon Jae-in says the nation should lessen its dependence of core materials from certain countries, calling on the nation to ramp up its efforts to localize the supply of high-tech materials amid the ongoing trade row with Japan.
And he took a trip to a carbon fiber production line in Dokdo province, one of the key materials in making hydrogen energy technology crucial in the era of the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. Shin Se-min starts us off.
President Moon Jae-in said the country needs to depend less on specific nations when it comes to core materials, adding that this is the way to become an unshakable economic powerhouse.
책임 있는 경제 강국이 되기 위해서는 핵심 소재의 특정 국가 의존도를 줄여야 합니다. 이제 시작입니다. 제조업 강국 한국의 저력을 다시 보여줄 수 있습니다.
While attending an event orchestrated by Hyoseong Advanced Materials, the president promised to nurture the nation's carbon fiber industry in light of Hyoseong Group's announcement that it will invest a total of 1 trillion won, or over $827 million, in its production line of carbon fiber plant by the year 2028. Hyoseong says the expansion of the production line in Jeonju, Jeollabuk-do province will place it as the world's #3 carbon fiber producer. And the group's carbon fiber business plans to churn out 24,000 tons of carbon fiber every year at 10 production lines starting 2028. This material in particular, with 1/4 the weight of steel but 10 times stronger, is a key element for the hydrogen energy market, which in turn feeds the automobile, aerospace, and defense industries. Carbon fiber is also one of the items potentially subject to Japan's tighter export controls against South Korea. The conglomerate, being the first homegrown company to develop carbon fibers in 2011, helped make South Korea the 4th country to cultivate such technology after Japan, the U.S., and Germany. However, much of the nation's auto industry has been relying on Japan-made carbon fiber for production of fuel storage tanks. The president's visit to Hyoseong plant on Tuesday is seen as part of his determined drive to up the nation's competitiveness in the high-tech materials industry amid a downgrading trade relations with Japan. Moon, urging local companies to join in on fostering homegrown technologies, promised to support with investment and review possibilities of immuning preliminary assessment for R&D firms in need of self-reliance. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The Japanese government has given the second authorization of South Korea-bound shipments of high-tech materials since its export curbs against South Korea took effect last month. The Korean government, however, says uncertainties will remain until Japan completely retracts the curbs. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
The Japanese government has reportedly authorized a second shipment of an industrial material covered by its export restrictions on South Korea. According to industry and government sources, Japan has approved a request to export photoresist to South Korean chipmaker Samsung Electronics. This is the second such approval since Tokyo announced export curbs on 3 key materials to Seoul in July. The latest batch, if shipped, is said to be a supply that'll last for 6 months.
Photoresists are rarely used for military purposes, so Japan might think it would be unreasonable to ban shipping those items. Rather than photoresists, Korean companies would feel a more pressing need for hydrogen fluoride, which has not been approved for shipping yet.
At this moment, to avoid unnecessary confrontation between the countries, it is very important for the government and the business community of the country to contain the current situation and to manage the current relationship.
The South Korean government and industry sources say uncertainties will remain unless Tokyo completely withdraws its export curbs. Some say the Japanese move might be a message ahead of a meeting between the two countries' foreign ministers in Beijing, which could also affect the fate of the Seoul-Tokyo Military Information Sharing Pact this week. In the meantime, a Korean media source said on Tuesday that Japanese semiconductor component suppliers have been asking South Korean chipmakers, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, to continue their business. They reportedly have expressed a willingness to produce high-quality materials or increase their production in South Korea because the items produced overseas are not subject to Tokyo's export curbs. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Senior South Korean lawmaker Park Ji-won has returned from a visit to Japan, where he met with the ranking member of Tokyo's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Park went as a special envoy of the National Assembly Speaker. In a press conference today, he said he held candid talks with Toshihiro Nikai, Secretary General of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, in a meeting that lasted well over 5 hours. Although he didn't reveal what was discussed, Park said that he felt that Japan shares the idea that Seoul and Tokyo should pursue future-oriented ties. Park added that he got the idea that Tokyo was positive about President Moon Jae-in's Liberation Day speech, in which he said he would join hands with Japan should it choose the path of cooperation. Earlier this month, a South Korean parliamentary delegation visiting Japan was scheduled to meet with Nikai, but it was called off at the Japanese side's request. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang is in Beijing for three-way talks with her Japanese and Chinese counterparts. She'll also sit down separately with the Japanese Foreign Minister in a closely watched meeting where she'll likely urge Japan to drop its trade restrictions on Korea. Our Lee Ji-won at the Foreign Ministry.
South Korea's Foreign Affairs Minister Kang said there's been no decision yet as to whether Seoul will terminate its military information sharing pact with Tokyo. Minister Kang said this when leaving for Beijing on Tuesday morning for the 9th Seoul-Beijing-Tokyo Foreign Affairs Ministers' talks.
We are still reviewing it. Nothing has been decided yet.
An official at the Blue House also reconfirmed this, telling reporters that any decision will consider a quantitative and qualitative assessment of military information and Japan's attitude about future relations. Japan, in July and early August, imposed trade restrictions on South Korea, citing what it said were security reasons. And as a result, Seoul has been reviewing whether to continue its General Security of Military Information Agreement with Japan. By this Saturday, August 24, the South Korean government will have to decide whether or not to terminate the pact. GSOMIA is automatically renewed every year unless either party notifies the other that it's quitting, in which case it would expire in November. There have been local reports that say the decision will be made at the weekly National Security Council meeting on Thursday. Now, this matter, along with the ongoing dispute over Japan's trade restrictions and the South Korean Supreme Court's ruling on Japanese firms compensating Korean laborers, is expected to top the agenda at the bilateral meeting between Ministers Kang and Taro Kono. The meeting is to take place Wednesday afternoon, separately from the trilateral meeting with their Chinese counterpart earlier in the day. At the airport, Kang hinted that at her bilateral meeting with Kono, she will once again urge Tokyo to withdraw its unfair trade restrictions on Seoul. The two diplomats' meeting comes just 3 weeks after they met on the sidelines of the ASEAN Regional Forum in Thailand. There, they engage in a war of words, both trying to win support from other countries. But it remains to be seen whether the two will clash again in Beijing, now that their leaders seem to have softened their tones. Meanwhile, the Seoul Beijing-Tokyo ministerial event is slated to take place for 3 days starting Tuesday, for the first time in 3 years, to discuss how the three countries can cooperate and develop their ties. 이지원, Arirang News.
Following North Korea's recent missile tests, Washington's nuclear envoy Stephen Biegun has just arrived in Seoul to talk with his South Korean counterparts on solidifying security cooperation between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. On Wednesday, the U.S. point man on North Korea will likely ask South Korea to extend its military intelligence sharing agreement with Japan. The ongoing trade friction with Japan led South Korea to reconsider the deal, which will be automatically renewed unless Seoul decides to scrap it by this Saturday. Biegun will also likely talk with South Korean officials about the possible working-level talks between North Korea and the U.S. The South Korea-U.S. joint military exercises wrapped up today, but until the very end, North Korea continued to criticize South Korea for carrying out what it calls military provocations. Our Oh Jung-hee reports.
Will tensions ease and dialogue resume on the Korean peninsula with the end of the Seoul-Washington joint military exercise? The drills named Combined Command Post Training come to an end on Tuesday. The 10-day-long exercise did not involve real troops or equipment for field training. Instead, it was a computer-based simulation assuming a wartime situation. It was aimed at verifying South Korea's capacity for the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington. For the first time, a South Korean general served as the commander and an American general the vice commander. With combined command post training ending Tuesday, no more joint drills are scheduled for the rest of 2019. The allies, in an effort to keep denuclearization talks on track this year, carried out drills that were relatively scaled down, Dongmeng 19-1 in the first half, and combined command post training in the latter half of the year. But North Korea, which has long been sensitive about the drills, conducted 6 launches of new projectiles over the past few weeks as a tit-for-tat move. And on Tuesday, the last day of the exercise, Pyongyang state media once again slammed South Korea, saying the joint exercise is clearly a hostile act and an unacceptable military provocation that aims to invade the North. Views remain divided on whether North Korea will continue or stop its missile test after these drills end. Earlier this month, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wrote to U.S. President Donald Trump, saying he'd like to meet and start negotiations as soon as the drills are over. But as North Korea has long been opposed to Seoul introducing new weapons, such as F-35A stealth fighter jets, more of which will arrive in South Korea this week, the South's military is not ruling out more weapons tests from the north of the border in the coming days and weeks. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korean carrier Korean Air has followed other local airlines by deciding to cut flights to Japan. The ongoing boycott against Japan is seen as the main reason behind the move. Our Seon-kyung reports.
Korean Air said on Tuesday that it is suspending some routes to Japan starting September this year. Flights from Busan to Osaka will be indefinitely suspended from September 16, while routes from Jeju to Narita as well as Jeju to Osaka will be suspended from November 1st. Some other routes to Japan will be halted temporarily. The national flag carrier plans to stop services on the Incheon to Komatsu and Incheon to Kagoshima routes from September 29th to November 16, and a flight on the Incheon to Asahi route from September 29th to October 26th. In an effort to offset lower customer demand to Japan, the company has decided to increase the number of flights to alternative destinations, including China and Southeast Asia. The company plans to open new routes to the Chinese cities of Zhangjiajie, Hangzhou, and Nanjing, and increase the number of flights on the Incheon-Beijing route from 14 flights a week to 17 flights a week. It also plans to launch a route from Incheon to Clark Field in the Philippines from October 27. Korean Air will increase its number of flights from Incheon to Da Nang in Vietnam to 21 times a week and from Incheon to Chiang Mai in Thailand to 11 times a week. As of now, 8 Korean carriers, including Korean Air and Asiana Airlines, have decided to cut flights to Japan. About 60 routes to Japan will see reductions. Amid the ongoing trade dispute between Seoul and Dokdo, lower trade demand to Japan looks like it will persist for the time being. 서은경, Arirang News.
A South Korean delegation is in Tokyo to attend a meeting on next year's Olympics. The officials have pledged to raise the issue of Japan's labeling of Korea's Dokdo Island as Japanese territory on the map for the Olympic torch relay. Kang Young-woo tells us more.
The map of the torch relay route on the official website of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics Committee erroneously shows South Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo as if it's part of Japan. Despite Seoul lodging an official complaint with Japan to remove Dokdo from the map last month, Tokyo has refused. A South Korean delegation is in Japan this week to attend a National Olympic Committee meeting. With officials from the International Olympic Committee and other nations' delegations in attendance, the South Korean side has vowed to raise the issue of the falsely labeled Dokdo Island on Japan's torch relay map.
We're going to strongly protest the Dokdo Island issue and press for our demands to be accepted.
On the increasing concerns over radiation in Fukushima and food from that region, the Korean Sport and Olympic Committee said it's going to urge the IOC to have international experts launch a thorough examination to provide trustworthy information. The South Korean delegation added it plans to cooperate with other nations' representatives to ensure the safety of all athletes, coaching staff, and other participants at next year's Tokyo Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. Kang Young-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, 2 South Korean online streaming platforms are merging together to become the largest video service provider in the country. The move is aimed at competing with global giants such as Netflix and YouTube. Our Choi Young with the details.
On Tuesday, South Korea's Fair Trade Commission announced the merger of 2 online video streaming platforms. One is Oksusu, operated by local mobile carrier SK Telecom, and the other is Puk, run by Korea's 3 main broadcasters. Starting service next month, a new integrated platform called Wave will be the biggest video streaming service in the country by number of subscribers with 14 million, almost 7 times what Netflix has in South Korea. 30% of Wave will be owned by mobile carrier SK Telecom, while the rest will go in 3 equal shares to the broadcasters. Those opposed to the merger have raised the possibility that Korea's #1 communication firm SK Telecom might abuse its dominant market position. The Fair Trade Commission listened to those concerns and approved the merger on a few conditions. For example, SK Telecom cannot discriminate against non-SK Telecom users by banning them from subscribing to the new Wave. And after the merger, the 3 broadcasters cannot start charging for content they provided for free until now. The 2 companies, through their merger, said they will attract larger-scale investment and utilize it for content production. They said they will not only defend the domestic market from Netflix and YouTube, but also advance overseas, competing globally with their own original content. Choi Young, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in has praised local agro-food giant Harim Group, located in Iksan, Jeollabuk-do province, for its plan to invest heavily in the region. Harim is among a few large companies based outside the capital area, which Moon has touted as a good example of helping to bring balanced national growth. The firm has promised to invest over $728 million in the province by the year 2024. President Moon said during a visit to the company today that the plan could create around 2,000 jobs. He also thanked the employees for their efforts to provide people with fresh and safe food. The United Nations has asked North Korea to investigate the whereabouts of 30 missing South Koreans believed to have been abducted by the regime. According to the Voice of America, the UN's Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances recently requested Pyongyang see who out of the 30 are still alive and find out where they are. Most of these South Koreans were fishermen and crew who were kidnapped at sea in the 1960s and 70s. The working group accepts cases of missing persons from their relatives and civic groups and then asks the relevant countries to submit investigation results. The view is that the information the North submits is not quite sufficient. According to Seoul's Unification Ministry, more than 100,000 South Koreans have been abducted or detained by the North since the 1950s. China has decided to give 1 million tons of food assistance to North Korea after President Xi Jinping's visit to the regime in June. That's according to Tokyo-based Asahi Shimbun on Tuesday, citing South Korean government officials and North Korea-China traders. After the summit with Kim Jong-un in June, Beijing decided to give North Korea 1 million tons of food aid to North Korea, including corn and 800,000 tons of rice. And due to that temporary relief, the paper suggested the North might be even harsher towards South Korea. Seoul had offered to provide 50,000 tons of rice to the North via the UN's World Food Programme, but the regime rejected it, citing the Seoul-Washington joint military exercise. Experts are warning that the ongoing anti-government protests in Hong Kong could have negative effects on South Korea's economy. Our Kim Jae-hee explains.
South Korea is the fourth largest exporter to Hong Kong with nearly $46 billion of shipments last year. Only China, the U.S., and Vietnam exported more to the territory. Hong Kong acts as a bridge between Korea and China, and Seoul's main export items, semiconductor chips, go through Hong Kong on their way to factories in China. But analysts warn that if the city's anti-government demonstrations get worse, not only will they affect the financial markets, but they could also harm Korea's exports. And Hong Kong could face one more potential risk. If Beijing directly intervenes in the crisis, the U.S. could revoke Hong Kong's special status, meaning Hong Kong would no longer be free from the tariffs that the U.S. places on China.
If Hong Kong loses its preferential treatment, not only would Hong Kong stocks plunge, the stock prices in China may also take a nosedive. And as South Korea is intricately linked to Hong Kong in terms of trade, Seoul would also be directly affected in its exports to China and other Chinese territories.
With the U.S.-China trade spat and Japan's export restrictions already causing uncertainty for Seoul's economy, anxiety is growing among South Korean investors who have put money into Hong Kong stocks. According to Bloomberg, Hong Kong's stock market plunged as the protests escalated, losing $622 billion since July. Although South Korea's Financial Supervisory Service says the drop is not big enough for those who invested in Hong Kong equity-linked securities to lose their money, it plans to hold a conference with related associations to check risk factors, including Hong Kong's sinking stocks. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
A special exhibition on Korean history and traditional culture has been getting a lot of visitors in Copenhagen, Denmark, since it opened in late June. Gyeongju National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage in Gyeongju City have organized the art exhibition at Denmark's Nikolai Kunsthal Gallery, showcasing pictures, installations, and Lego art inspired by the ancient royal site of Wolseong. Wolseong means moon castle. It contains a historic palace and fortress that were built back in 101 AD during Korea's Silla dynasty, and it has been listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The exhibition runs until September 8th. A South Korean YouTube vlogger dubbed Korean Billy has become an internet sensation with his spot-on impressions of the regional accents of Britain. Our Oh Soo-young got to sit down with a Korean Billy before he returns to the UK to film more of his viral videos.
A 28-year-old Korean has mastered what it takes to be British through and through, based on his upbringing in Korea's coastal city of Busan. YouTube vlogger Korean Billy, or Kong Sung-jae, has shot to fame in the United Kingdom over the past 3 years, after his videos on British dialects and culture went viral around the world. Beginning with his videos on imitating the Liverpool accent, which he first became exposed to as an exchange student in college. Korean Billy's YouTube channel has got millions of views and tens of thousands of subscribers. He attributes his uncanny ability to imitate dozens of British accents to Korea's own diverse regional dialects.
For example, in the United Kingdom, if you go 15 minutes, away from one city, that city has a totally different atmosphere. And also in Korea, when you take a train from Seoul and take a train for about 2 hours from Seoul. People speaking a totally different language, like different accent, and that atmosphere is absolutely different.
With his videos, Billy has also drawn interest to his home country, South Korea, amid the growing popularity of Korean pop music and cultural content.
When I was an exchange student 4 years ago, when I was in the UK, so at that time, British people didn't know very much about South Korea, but this year when I went to the United Kingdom, I could definitely feel that lots of British people are even interested in going to South Korea and travel to South Korea. Also, the thing is that the image of South Korea is really positive, I think. So that is also a good thing to me as well.
Korean Billy plans to keep making videos for his channel, blending the best of British with his quirky Korean charm. 오수영, Arirang News.
Millions of Japanese consumers could reportedly face higher heating bills this winter if South Korea bans exports of kerosene to Japan. Bloomberg reports that 90% of the kerosene Japan uses for heat is produced domestically, while most of the rest is imported from Korea. Citing industry sources, the article said an export ban by Seoul could cause heating fuel shortages and price hikes. One of the 4 major gates in Seoul from the Joseon dynasty has been restored using digital technology and is now open to the public. Tonimun Gate, also known as Hodaemun Gate, located in the western part of the city, was torn down in 1915 during Japan's colonial rule. Its restoration had been difficult due to traffic and compensation for the land where the gate stood. Local officials have now managed to restore it using virtual reality and augmented reality technologies. People can download a mobile app and see what the gate looked like in the past from multiple angles. Train tickets are now on sale for this year's Korean Thanksgiving holiday, also known as Chuseok. The nation's railway operator Korail says people can book tickets through its website, at train stations or at ticket sales agencies over the next 2 days. You can buy tickets for the Gyeongbu, Gyeongjeon, Donghae, Chungbuk lines today, while tickets for Honam, Jeolla, Gangneung and Changhang can be bought tomorrow. Online purchases will be available from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m, while ticket counters will be open for 2 hours from 9 a.m. This year's Chuseok holiday runs through September 12th to the 15th. A Venezuelan man who lost his leg in a car accident has walked 14,000 kilometers across South America. It took Yeli Aranda 13 months to finish this inspiring journey. The 57-year-old said he hopes his adventure could inspire other people to pursue their dreams despite difficulties. Aranda and his daughter each lost a leg in a car accident 6 years ago, and he was in a coma for 15 days. To thank God for saving his life, he began to walk to religious shrines around his hometown before deciding to challenge himself by traveling the whole length of the South American continent. He only had about $30 when he left, but he made his way by selling bracelets on the road and getting help from people who provided him with food and shelter. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now where we take a look at Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of When in Korea, or Wink, with Justin.
For 20 years, I have wandered the globe. During these years, there is no country I have not touched. Europe, Arabia, South America, and even the United States of America. However, there's always been a question that needed to be answered. How have I done my job so far? Is this what you wanted? Today, I will find out just how well I have carried out my mission of spreading Korean culture around the entire world. If I have succeeded, then any foreigner should be able to identify these historic Korean artifacts. However, if they don't know, I have failed my mission thus far. Quiz time! Quiz event! Hi, my name is Justin. I'm from Arirang TV. I'm gonna give you 5 items to guess, but the items are in Korean, so just guess what it's used for. If you can guess 3 right, you get to pick a prize from our little mystery box over there. Would that be okay? Really easy. Okay.
Ooh, frisbee.
Frisbee. Catch.
Oops.
Oh, it works as a frisbee, but it's not a frisbee. Bracelet, no. So that's 2.
And then
It's a Korean donut.
A Korean.
Yeah. To get the water out.
That's very creative. That's the first time I ever heard that. Kind of squeeze the water out?
Yeah.
Okay, no.
Someone said you hot pot on.
Hot pot on. Oh, that's actually a good use for it. They should use that for that. So 3 out of 5.
바지를
So-
올려주세요.
Oh, my pants are kind of. I didn't know. Sorry. 살 보였어요?
can I get a hint?
Okay, what's a good hint?
Just tell me like if I use it at night or day, is it a group thing?
Doesn't matter.
It's used to make cake.
But no, unfortunately, I can't give you
look
this
like a
one.
farmer.
I look like a farmer? Well, I'm actually a vendor.
A vendor.
Yeah, from a long time ago.
Okay.
But what this is it's actually called a twari. Twari.
Twari.
Twari. Like
Twari.
with double D. Twari.
Twari.
Twa.
Twari.
D. Twari.
Twari.
Oh wait, no, right? It can be a music bowl.
A music bowl? Okay, there.
You're not getting this.
Oh, you're trying to take it?
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's 2, so you need 1. You cheated.
It's
Too
not
easy for you.
easy.
It was a hot and sunny day, but starting tonight, the nation is expecting rain.
Let's get more on the weather from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. The stinging sun brought up the temperatures quickly during the day, keeping the western parts of the country under heat wave alerts. However, we can expect some cooler temperatures from the rain that will start tonight and expecting to spread nationwide tomorrow. And Beijing, on the other hand, continues to be under some scorching weather. The rain over Korea is expected to be heavy at times and expected to be lasting until Thursday. Now, the northern half of the peninsula will have the least amount of precipitation with between 5 and 40 millimeters, while Jeju and the south coast will see heavier rain of more than 100 millimeters. And also, due to the high waves, swimming is temporarily prohibited in the sea. Now, checking out the readings for tomorrow, we are expecting a slight increase from this morning as most of the readings are expected to hit up to 24 degrees Celsius. And it's hotter down in Jeju, which starts the day at 26 degrees tomorrow. Now, with rainy skies drenching the nation in the afternoon, Seoul will reach up to 31 degrees, while Gyeongju and Busan hits up to 29 degrees with a lot heavier rain. After the rain, the morning lows and daytime highs will stay cooler, relieving us from the scorching hot weather. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.